All right, welcome everyone to the September 7th, 2021 regular meeting of council. We've already called our meeting to order. We just came out of an executive session that was brief, and we're now going to move into announcements. Regular meeting of council. We've already called our meeting to order.
All right.
Got a little echo.
Yes, we're gonna.
Good to hear that I'm sounding loud and clear. So I know that I think Laura, did you want to make an announcement about Porch Fest?
Yes, thank you. So Porch Fest is Saturday, September the 18th. There's a flyer in your packet. You'll start to hear information about it on WISO pretty soon and in the YS News. And we have 36 porches and 50 bands. It's pretty awesome. All local people, bands with a local connection. And we do encourage you to, COVID protocols will be followed, socially distanced, wear a mask. Hopefully you'll get vaccinated before you come. And it's just going to be a real great time. Starts at noon and all outdoors. You can download a map from the internet to find all the porches and which bands are on which porch and at what time. So we're looking forward to a great day of out of doors, socializing and good local music.
All right, thanks, Laura. And I believe that website is ysporchfest.com, and they also have a Facebook page. Any other announcements? Okay. Lisa, did you have something? No? Okay. Just a few things for me. First of all, I guess I wanted to share, in case people haven't heard about this, it's been on NPR and it's pretty sad. The city of Lebanon has become the first city apparently to adopt the sanctuary city for the unborn, which even though you cannot get an abortion in Lebanon, they've decided to make this statement. And I wanted to mention that 19 individuals took out petitions to run for council in response to what I think a lot of people are really upset about. There are two groups that are supporting these candidates. One is called the Lebanon Handmaidens, and one is called Activate Lebanon. And anyway, I just wanted to let people know, because I imagine that many of us would like to give our support to change that kind of policy. Next, I wanted to mention I got to spend a little time at the pool on the last day. I want to thank the village team for making that happen for villagers. It was really a great season. I know that it was hard to keep it staffed, but I felt safe. It was sad that the dogs didn't get to jump in yesterday, but I understand that we have some staffing challenges, so hopefully that'll come back next year. Also wanted to mention there was an article in actually a letter to the editor 2 weeks ago in the YS News about the issue that I have been raising around street vendors being so close to the sidewalk that people have trouble navigating. And so again, we haven't done anything legislatively beyond our COVID protocols, but I will encourage our public safety team to be more cognizant of where there is the ability for someone to move back a little bit so that the sidewalk is not being blocked. I know I've experienced that, and not only is it not ideal during COVID, but it's certainly not ideal for people to have to walk into the street to get around things. I've seen some great examples of vendors like the jeweler who sets up right by Urban Handmade, and she has designed her booth so that you walk off the sidewalk into an alcove and then you check out the booth. It's not that hard to do, and we could certainly do a better job in front of a Sonda, for example. Last thing I wanted to mention is I appreciated the letter from Mayor Pam about people looking out and thinking about their sidewalks and what they could do to clear it. I want to emphasize that we will continue on the village side to be alert to this, but also if folks are having trouble clearing those shrubs off the sidewalk, reach out to us and let us know. We need to work together because this is definitely a problem that is really affecting our folks that are differently abled. And we want to make sure that we're a walk-friendly community for all ages and abilities. Last thing I want to say, it hit me really hard at our last meeting to learn after the meeting in executive session that we're going to be losing Chief Carlson. And so I just wanted to say a few things because I always admired Brian for deciding to pursue a career in public safety when he was 48. And he had a very different perspective going through the academy at a later age and having a variety of experiences. We saw a lot of things happen during Chief Carlson's time. We have our outreach specialist on staff, so we brought that social work element in. We've seen a lot of other changes that I think have been really important in just sort of delivering on those guidelines for village policing. And I appreciate that Chief Carlson was open and progressive in that regard. As everyone knows, it takes time to change, and often those changes, are something that we have to look at sort of step by step. But I will say that I think it's going to be a big loss for the community, and I just hope as we're doing this next search, and so this is kind of a call out to the citizen committee that's going to be involved in this, is to look at how we can continue the meaningful changes that we've been making so that we have a police department that is what our villagers want. So thank you, Chief Carlson. You're going to be missed. All right, that's all I've got. Anything else before we move into the consent agenda? Okay, we've got three.
Brian, I would just like to piggyback on what you said. One of the letters to the editor thanking the chief called him a change agent, and I think that is a very true statement. Not only is it hard to be a change agent, but this has been a very difficult time, I think, to be a chief of police or even a police officer. So I concur with you about the loss, and certainly I think we all wish him well and thank him.
Thanks, Marianne. Okay, consent agenda. We've got 3 sets of minutes, and I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move.
Second.
Okay, Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll, please.
Yes, McQueen.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, review of the agenda. And do we have anything that we need to add, revise, or remove?
Just the resolution that's, I think, 42 that was sent out this afternoon.
Okay, resolution 2021-42. We will add that to legislation. Anything else?
On the manager's report, will we get a report about the police chief search process? Be able to talk about it?
Yeah, I believe we will. I saw there was something in the packet, so we'll make sure to talk about that during the manager's report. Anything else? Okay. Marianne, petitions and communications.
Yes. We got a communication from Lori Askelin suggesting that we incorporate bike boulevards onto our streets as is appropriate in particular. We got information about the availability of the 3rd dose of the COVID vaccine for people who have some immune issues, and other advice from Greene County. Laura included an article about the Delta variant and the 2-month cycle that appears to be with that, as well as the information about Porch Fest. Laura, did you want to say anything more about that now?
No.
Okay. Brian included, well, actually, I didn't see the rules and procedures in the clerk-based packet, but I guess maybe it was in the full packet. And the mayor's clerk had a mayor's report.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's move into legislation then. And first up, we have the second reading of ordinance 2021-25. Judy, we can do that by title only.
It is establishing a fee schedule for residential and commercial building permits and declaring an emergency.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Josue.
All right, thank you, Brian. First, I want to announce that we have a certified building department by the Ohio Building Standards Board. So we included that in your packet. We were very successful first time application. Everything went smoothly. We're proud of the accomplishment. We've met all of the requirements. So the step that's missing in this process is council voting in a fee schedule. And should you approve this tonight, we can begin receiving permit applications as soon as tomorrow. So updates, during my presentation at the first hearing, I provided numbers, what the fee schedule will be and how does it compare to the surrounding municipality. And our proposed fee schedule is below the Greene County rates. So I think that's good for the village, good for our community. And the reason we went down this path is because we have an economic imperative to have a streamlined process, reduce the barriers to getting construction in the village. And I'm happy that we are able to provide a better service, faster turnaround times, and what seems to now be a lower rate.
Okay, questions or comments from council?
Well, Josue, I just want to commend you and your team for putting this together. I was a little surprised to see it come to fruition as quickly as it has. And it sounds like what we'll end up with is a system that's even better than we anticipated. So congratulations to you and your team for doing such a good job in moving this forward.
Thank you.
This is Lisa. One of the things that we heard when we were discussing this from stakeholders was that their primary concern wasn't that this was the absolute least expensive, but it was more about turnaround time and quality of service. And, I hear you stressing the price point, and that's great, but it did make me concerned a little bit that if we're really trying to price it down, that we're maybe not building in enough buffer or contingency in case this becomes more challenging, there's unanticipated issues. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that, Josue.
That was a concern for me, Lisa. And in speaking with our contractor, we factored in contingencies through the contract vehicle that council has approved. And we've got that commitment from them to deliver commercial plan review within 7 days and residential within 3 days. So from a time delivery perspective, which is the primary concern for not just the Yellow Springs residents, for folks doing business with Greene County overall, we have a contractual commitment to deliver this on time. So we've got some buffer there within the delivery time that we can work with our contractors to deliver plan reviews and permits in a shorter time period than Greene County. So we're going to evaluate any bottlenecks or any concern in terms of the delivery time and figure out, did we get anything wrong with our cost? The way we arrived to our cost is, NIC, National Inspection Corporation, they work for 30 municipalities in the state. So they have a lot of data on how long a lot of these permits take. So we're able to leverage that data to understand what the labor costs are and how the labor cost would apply to the village and the village's process. So I'm comfortable where we are with the fee schedule because the vast majority of the work is going to be done by NIC, and we've been able to negotiate something with NIC. The cost where I think that we will evaluate over the next 6 months to make sure that we have right is our internal process. When someone comes to the window and hand us their application, is it going to be as cost effective as we're currently planning? And the way that we're currently planning the cost effectiveness is a constituent comes to the window here on the second floor. They hand over their completed application. We take a deposit. We then take the application, scan it, and that scan gets delivered into a shared network drive, like a Dropbox or SharePoint. That data gets dropped there, reviewed. There's a technician on the other end that pulls the application, enters the data into iWorks, and they're filling out our iWorks system. So they'll be using our iWorks permitting process. So we think that the labor cost for us is streamlined enough that it isn't going to cost us more than what we have factored in our fee schedule, which is that 10% above the cost for NIC to deliver the service. So we've streamlined that process. We think that the 10% will be enough to cover our labor cost, our technology costs, and the state fees for our building permits. But we'll keep a close eye on it over the next 6 months. The team feels very confident here, the team, Denise, Johnny, myself, that the process is streamlined enough that we aren't going to take on more labor costs than what's already factored in here. The fact that we were able to get the NIC team to deal with the iWorks system, that way we're not the ones entering the data, that's going to save us time and streamline the management process.
Wait, Kevin, again, thanks for all you shared on that. Would a contractor that wants to, or someone that wants to submit an application, can they begin the process in iWorks?
Currently, no, we're working with iWorks to be able to link the permit module, just like, Kevin, you use the iWorks system for work orders and tickets and stuff like that. We're working to link the permit module to user accounts. So if you go into user account, then you can start that process and upload files directly onto it. So the iWorks permitting module allows that online completion. We're going to be having those conversations about how to link a created dashboard, a user dashboard, where folks could enter that data themselves and start that process themselves.
Excellent. All positive stuff. Thank you very much.
And I'll add one more thing to that is everything in iWorks is linked to the property. So any permits issue, we'll be able to track this information internally by property. So if property changes owner, the information stays in our system and it's attached to the partial ID. And that's the information we'll be sharing with Greene County. So when you go to the Greene County GIS system, you'll be able to look at permit information that the village has issued.
Any other questions or comments? Quick question, Josue. So you said we could begin taking permit applications as soon as tomorrow. When is the full transition?
The full transition we provide upon your approval, that would allow us to provide our 60-day notice with the county. And so then we begin the transition period. We have 60 days for the transition period. And what that looks like from the county side is they're informed that after 60 days, they have to finish with all of their permitting process. We can simultaneously take applications beginning during that transition period. So effective tomorrow, if you approve this, we can start taking applications and we'll inform the county, and the county will need to wrap up and complete their permitting process for current applications. There'll be a couple constructions that will require inspection over that 60 period, and some may go beyond that. And what we discussed with the county is that anything that starts with the county, that's in the process with the county, will continue with the county. So anyone who's already submitted a permit and got a permit and they'll need to get inspection, even if it's 6 months down the road, that work will be completed with the county. One of the things that we did as part of that transition plan that we put together for the state was that we called all the major we called the property owners and project leads who had construction projects either underway or were planning significant projects. And we had a conversation with them about our timeline, expectations, and we discussed transition items. So any big projects that were in the works or in queue, those project owners were informed about the timeline, so they had the opportunity to decide whether they were going to wait or they were going to continue with the Greene County process. So, but in short, that's a long answer to your questions. A 60-day transition period. For part of it, we'll have simultaneous services going on.
Okay, great. So since this is a second reading, I'm going to open the public hearing. And are there any other questions or comments from council or from citizens? Okay, well, this has been a multi-step process. It's nice to be at the finish line, and I think everyone's done a great job. So with that, I will close the public hearing, and Judy, let's call the roll.
All right. Stokes.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have the first reading of ordinance 2021-18, and we can also do that one by title only.
All right, this is prohibiting housing discrimination based upon source of income in the Village of Yellow Springs by amending section 626.02 and adding section 626.08 to chapter 626 Equal Housing Opportunity of the Village of Yellow Springs Codified Ordinances.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, excellent. Very important piece of legislation. Brianne, are you going to start this discussion off, or?
Well, I don't think Deborah Levy is here tonight, but this
She is.
Oh, she is.
Yeah.
I'll let Deborah talk about this one.
Okay. Great. Deborah, if you want to mic on.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm under date enable. I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
Let me see if my videos, there we go. So good to see you all on this warm September night. And so we're here to talk about source of income protection. And this would prohibit a landlord from discriminating against a tenant based on their source of income. So whether they have a voucher, like a Section 8 housing choice voucher, whether their income is from like a government assistance program, whether that's rental assistance or SSI, it would just prohibit a landlord from refusing to rent to them based on their source of income. And these ordinances have been passing pretty regularly throughout the state. I think Columbus passed this year, Akron just passed, a number of other cities have just passed these ordinances.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. All right, I know that Kevin Stokes has some important thoughts on this, and I appreciate what you put in the packet. Kevin, do you want to say a few words?
Sure, yes. Well, Deborah and the team at ABLE, thank you very much, because I know you all drafted, the original legislation, and we appreciate that. And, and I've begun talking about this, when 2020 happened, did I do it then or before? I can't remember. So it's like a lost year somewhere. So 2 years ago, let's say, I saw where there was a law in the state house, and it just stayed in committee and just died in committee, and they've got another bill that's in another committee that had a few hearings, but still not looking like it's going to get a lot of traction. So I think it's important, whether we're following the lead of other municipalities or not, doing it at the local level, is the right thing to do. If there are nuances that one municipality wants to do, we can certainly consider that. But one would think that it would be illegal already to deny someone housing based on their source of income. And we can just call it a great big giant loophole that I think we're filling now. My family has a couple of houses in Dayton that are on Section 8, and I've been responsible for maintaining them. And it's I think it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win-win for the residents that get safe, clean, affordable housing. And quite honestly, it just sort of escapes me why any landlord that's managing the business well would not, welcome this source of income. There's lots of benefits to it. Again, it's a win-win. So kudos to the ABLE team for putting this together, and I strongly encourage council to move forward with this. It is absolutely the right thing to do here in Yellow Springs. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Go ahead.
I have a question. Have you seen landlords just stop doing Section 8 housing because of something like this? Has it had a negative effect? Because, don't landlords have to sign up and they are subject to inspections and that kind of thing?
Yeah, we see landlords all the time just refuse to do accept vouchers. That's one of the reasons why these ordinances are being pushed, because if they refuse based on the source of income, that would be discrimination. So we see it all the time where there'll be signs saying we don't accept Section 8. Oftentimes we see that as a way to discriminate based on race, quite honestly, because a large segment of a number of people that have vouchers are African-American women. And so we see that sort of as a way to say, we're not going to rent to you.
So just so I understand, this sort of forces a landlord to participate in Section 8 if somebody shows up and they can pay the rent with a Section 8 voucher?
This prohibits a landlord from discriminating against a tenant based on their source of income. So they could have other reasons, but it can't be because you have a voucher or, your income is SSI or so forth.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, two things I want to mention, and obviously we have a second reading, but one is, assuming that this does move forward, I think it's very important to reach out to landlords and do some education and make sure that people understand the program and the benefits and whatnot. The second thing is, I would assume there's some data on how much of Section 8 vouchers or how many are used in Yellow Springs. And I'd like to get a better idea, because I know anecdotally, I and others have talked about how having a Section 8 voucher doesn't mean you can find a place to live in Yellow Springs. So I think those two things would be important next steps along with this. Okay, anything else before we wrap up today's discussion on this? All right, I'm so glad this is coming forward. Judy, let's go ahead and do a roll call, even though we have a second reading.
For Stokes.
Yes, yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is ordinance 2021-24, which we can also do by title only.
Right, this is establishing public utility for municipal broadband by enacting new chapter 1043, municipal broadband of the codified ordinances, and approving creation of a utility fund.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, Josue.
All right, Brian, I have a presentation on this, and I also have members of the committee that have joined for this presentation as well. I'm going to cover updates from the last meeting or the last presentation we did on this topic, and then I want to hand it over to the team and to council for presentation, primarily because we've covered a lot of this content. As you know, we've been looking at broadband, establishing a municipal broadband enterprise for what is now almost 2 years. Really, the pandemic kicked this off or allowed us to expedite this process. So we've done a lot of work on this, and I'm I'm proud of the work that we've done. We've been able to build wireless downtown. We've got about 500 daily users on that system. We've got a lot of fiber already in downtown and assets that not just in the downtown, but also near Corey Street Apartments, Hawthorne Apartments, in other strategic locations where we could leverage what we have already built to expand those assets there and provide fiber to the home service. How are we going to do that now? As you know, we've received $300,000 for Broadband Ohio grant, and that's a partnership with Embecca, the school, SpringsNet, and the village. And this grant provides funding to build out the fiber infrastructure and connect up to 300 homes and businesses. I previously shared a map on what pilot sites locations would be, and I'll share this in a further slide. But what's important in this process is that the funding will allow us to build out fiber to the home services at no cost to the village. We've got this as grant money. We've built the fiber already existing in place with grant money. This additional $300,000 really allows us to connect a little over 15% of our residents of our market to high-speed internet service, provide them with a service that currently doesn't exist in the village. And by that, I mean the speeds at which we're able to offer and the price points that we are able to offer. I also have a pro forma that looks at financials for the entire broadband, the entire municipal broadband service. If we were to connect the entire village, the only issue with that pro forma is that it contemplates if we were borrowing money and incurring the entire cost of building that out. And what we're asking for you tonight is to establish the municipal broadband so that we could deliver a broadband service to the 300 homes and businesses that we have grant money to do. That's key for this to work. We've got money to build out this fiber to the home. We need the legal authority and ability to provide a broadband service to these homes. And we'll only get that if you approve or establish a municipal broadband enterprise to allow us to deliver that service to the homes. So the highlights on this slide is we've got this $300,000 to deliver the service. We have an RFP progress to finalize the budget. Based on the numbers that we have now, we may come down from that 300 homes unless we get one or two things happens. We're able to get more money from Broadband Ohio to deliver service to these 300 homes. We've had some market conditions change on us over the last couple of months. Equipment costs are higher, labor costs are higher, and that's not just in this industry, but it's in every industry, right? It's in homes, it's in auto productions. So our project is subject to those market conditions changing as well. But the other element to this is that right now we're not asking the village for any money. We're not asking the taxpayer for any money. We can deliver a service without any village funding. However, village contribution would help get the program further. But I hear one of the concerns that have been raised by at least one council member is, the cost of this, and do we even have capability? Are we capable of doing this? And the answer is that yes, we are capable of doing this. We have an incredible asset in our community that it's hard to come by. We have one of 18 information technology centers in the state, and that Information Technology Center serves over 31 school districts and multiple municipal government entities, including the village of Yellow Springs. So we have incredible operating capacity with Embecca. We've got an incredible team. We have Tim, we have Scott, Thor, Jordan. There's also council members on this team, Brian and Kevin. So we've got an incredibly talented team here in the village. We've got Johnny, who does an amazing job with the electrical enterprises and the electrical distribution. Denise with her economic background, housing background, and legislative background. So we've got an incredible team and talent that we are able to execute this. And I think just tonight you approved on the fee schedule. We've delivered on a building department with a faster turnaround time. I think we can deliver on this municipal broadband and deliver high quality service to our residents at faster speeds and better rates. I've got presentations on the importance of this. I don't want to bore you with this. You've seen this presentation several times. The argument for better internet in the village is key to school and learning, healthcare, finding a job, telework, and economic recovery. One of the things I highlighted in a resolution that's also before you tonight is that the fragility and dependence of our local economy on tourism-based jobs. During the pandemic, we had an income loss of over 200,000. That's jobs that just weren't active or people weren't working. So we're very susceptible to those income income taxes. Having a strong municipal broadband allows our community to have access to a greater labor market. A lot of us are working from home. A lot of folks are working from home. If our residents have an ability to connect to that cyber highway and be able to work, have a job that's online that they can work from home, we're providing greater economic opportunities for our own residents as well as businesses. Better solutions, building out that fiber network. I mentioned we've built out significant fiber infrastructure already. This next phase of the project is to leverage fiber that is already in place. Just with the fiber that has already been built out, we can serve a little over 160 homes and businesses with existing fiber. The additional homes come from expanding the fiber that's already in place and creating additional backhaul fiber down Dayton Street. We'll be able to provide more public Wi-Fi, stabilize community, and spur economic development. And important in this process has been that from the beginning, we've contemplated how do we build equity and close the digital divide through municipal broadband. So having a Lifeline Light project, the Lifeline, if you don't know, it's a program sponsored by the federal government where it provides internet access for low-income individuals. We are proposing to, from the beginning, embed a Lifeline project where low-income residents and families can have access for high-speed internet service for as little as $25 a month. A reminder, phase one included that downtown, building that fiber network and that access point. The phase two included expanding fiber to Hawthorne Apartment and Corey Street Apartments and other key locations in the village, such as Gaunt Park. So we built that infrastructure. This is the phase three, building fiber to the home and businesses for 162 locations. Since our funding from Broadband Ohio is more than we were initially pursuing, we're able to do up to 300 homes. The products that we're looking to deliver, there are two speed tiers, 300 megabits per second and 1 gigabit per second speed. In terms of price tiers, we are planning to offer 3 price tiers. One starting at $25 a month, that's the Lifeline project that I mentioned, a $45 a month for a 300 megabit per second speed, and $65 a month for the 1 gigabit per second speed. To put this in perspective, I pay $60 for a 100 megabit per second speed. This is in my personal home. That's my cost. What we will be offering residents would be 300 megabits for $45. That's 3 times the speed that I currently paid Spectrum at significantly less money per month to the residents. So you can see that value that we're creating. That's a $15 value just on that mid-tier, that 300 megabits per second speed, and at 3 times the speed. So great value that we're creating. Obviously, we want to go beyond those 300 homes because the demand and the need has been demonstrated through the various surveys and broadband assessment that the village has done. The opportunity is the entire village. And that's that phase 4. We're looking at the future. So why would a municipal broadband utility offer? Mention the speeds. We'll have support, tech support within the community. This will deliver cost savings for residents. And I've been talking a lot about the economic value this broadband, but there's also we're looking at other values that are important to our community, and that is net neutrality, where everyone has equal access to the internet, and doesn't matter how much you pay and whether you have access to Netflix or Hulu or NPR or WYSO. All traffic will be treated equally. It'll be fair price. So net neutrality is important. Another part of the net neutrality and the principles of the Yellow Springs Municipal Broadband is privacy. With the village owning the data, we have more control over what happens to the data, any data mining that happens, which we're not planning any, and we're certainly not planning to sell the people's data to any for-profit corporation looking to make money on personal private data that ISPs typically collect. Mentioned the Lifeline project. Who else is doing this? We're not the first, we're not pioneers in this space by any means. There are 89 municipal fiber to the premise networks in the village. This is information from 2018 when the SpringsNet folks presented to council. More municipal broadband fiber networks have been established since. In 2018, there were over 750 American communities with their own internet networks. And why is that? The private sector can't provide this solution, so communities have had to adapt, innovate in order to stay relevant and thrive. The strategy and timeline, I've updated this strategy, the timeline since I last presented this, primarily because of where we are in the process. This is a complicated project. There's a lot of complexity, supply chain issues that apply to this project, one of them being the availability of equipment, the labor availability to build out that fiber. So proof of concept, when we initially were pursuing funding opportunity, we said, oh, we wanted to do this in summer, early fall. Looks like the more realistic timeline now is November, December timeline. This builds on the proof of concept and allows us to build a revenue stream that we could then use to justify pursuing revenue bonds. Some of you were on council when the SpringsNet committee came to council and presented on the pro forma and the meetings that have been held with Port Authority entities. The financial information, which I'll share some of it later, is there, and it shows a strong case for revenue bonds. There was at least one Port Authority that demonstrated an interest and a commitment to willing to fund this project back a few years ago. Now, with the work that we've done in the environment that we are, I've spoken with the Greene County Economic Office, their support for bringing this project to their Port Authority as well. So from a financial perspective, this can be built and it can be sustainable. How sustainable, you may ask? Well, this, looking at the market opportunity, this is not considering the $300,000 that we have already granted. So starting from scratch, this would take a $3 million to build out the entire network. It'll be about $4 million in total debt payments over the 20 years, with a revenue of $23 million over 20-year period, and that's considering a 65% participation rate. When you factor in the cost the cost to operate and maintain such a network, our net income will be a little over $3 million. So it'll cost about the $7 million plus the $4 million, or $3 to $4 million in total debt payments to maintain and operate this for a 20-year period. And those numbers will become apparent when I get to the pro forma. But for forecasting purposes, what does a typical simulation look like? We're looking at average monthly expenses once the entire network is built out and we have a 65% participation. We're looking at total monthly expenses of $40,000 with monthly revenues of $56,000. Based on the simulation test that we did, we could be revenue positive within 10 months and be profitable after 23 months, which I think for any new project to be profitable within 2 years is an incredible accomplishment. So what's that excess revenue for over 20 years? We're looking at $3.1 million. I'm going to stop my presentation here and switch over to a pro forma. Again, this pro forma contemplates a full build out for the network, which is not what we're doing right now. Right now, we're looking to establish a municipal broadband so that we can deliver internet service to the up to 300 homes that we have acquired and secured grant money for. No out-of-pocket expense for the village right now. So that's for those 300 homes. Let me pull up that file. All right, I have it up on my screen. This is I know there were questions about the pro forma. There were some doubts about where the financials and capabilities. The team has done a good job of putting this together. Here's the pro forma and on the simulation highlights. I'm gonna walk you through some of these screens here. We took the potential market estimates. So we're looking at a potential 1,800 customers. That's the total market share. Let's say if we captured 65% of that market, we'll be looking at serving internet service to almost 1,200 customers. If 20% of those customers on the tier 1 pricing, which is the $25 a month service, that's about 236 customers. Tier 2, if we capture 50% of the market of almost 1,200 customers, that would be a total of 590 at $45 a month. That would yield about 26.5 thousand a month. Tier 3 is that 1 gigabit internet service tier, and that would be about 30% of our customer base. I'll be in that tier because these Zoom meetings require a lot of data. That will be about 354 customers at $65 a month. That's about $23,000 in monthly revenue. So when you add up the total revenue, that's about $56,000, $40,000 in expenses. What is factor in the expenses? Well, we consider just about everything in our expense sheet. We've got operating expense. We factor in infrastructure costs, software costs, service costs, supplies. Includes personnel. So we factor those operating expense, we factor in capital expenses, what it costs to build out the project. Our pro forma is very detailed. And again, this is for if we build out the entire network, which right now we're focused on building out this pilot project for up to 3 homes. We think we're going to be successful, so we'll be coming back to council for a full-on municipal broadband service to the entire community. But we've been building on stages, and I think I've been very proactive, and Brian, you've been very proactive about managing expectations that we are ramping our ability to do this. We are there to deliver on that next phase. Worst case scenario, we have built infrastructure in place that's still worth something. And if that's something that we don't want to do in the future, say if council changes and council doesn't want to do this anymore, well, it's an asset. It's a very valuable asset that can be sold. And by my estimates, it could be sold at a profit if that is something that our community wants to explore. And it could be built at a profit on something that we were able to build on grant money. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I have Thor, who is the executive director of Embecca, and also the new owners of the property, the former DMS link. And Thor is a leader in the technology space with, he's providing full internet services to over 31 school districts and municipal government. He's also building out fiber network in several communities that are looking to serve entire communities. Has a big team, a big budget. Certainly, I feel privileged to be working side by side with Thor. And we've got Scott Fife, IT background. He's been working on this project for over 7 years now, I think. And Timothy Barhorst, who's a network engineer who's been part of this core team. There were many other champions along the way that have contributed to this project in many ways. They're not here tonight. but they're with us in spirit and their contributions continue. That's Jordan Gray, Ellis Jacobs, even A.B. Magnus have been part of this project. So many folks have been putting time and effort and tears and sweat into this project. So I'm going to open it up to Thor, and Thor, Scott, and Tim, please weigh in if I miss anything. So let me work on the miking here. All right, you should be able to unmute.
Okay, thanks, Josue. I thought your presentation was excellent. I think it's important to note, though, that if you do, while you are saving money on the tiers that you defined in your presentation, where villagers will be saving money, they're also going to be receiving a higher quality service than they've ever experienced before from a traditional telecom. These are fully synchronous services, same upload and download speed, which is becoming more and more important just because people are generating and creating data on their home networks, and they need to get out. It's not just an entertainment service anymore. I also wanted to point out that in the Design 9 study that the village purchased in 2017, they did an independent survey of the village as part of that study, and 73% of respondents desired better internet and data service. This is in 2017. Over 88. I thought another compelling number was 88% of respondents reported that internet is very important to their household in 2017. So I can only say that, with the work at home culture growing, and the need for home broadband, more at home learning, more distance learning, more web conferencing, synchronous services are going to be part of the future. Whether we're as the Village of Yellow Springs involved or not. So anyway, I think it's a worthy endeavor. I think that folks might want to check out fairlawngig.net. That's Fairlawn, FAIRLAWNGIG.net, and just take a look at what the community of Fairlawn's been able to accomplish, and they're right here in Ohio. So I think it's a worthy endeavor every day of the week when local governments take local control of critical telecommunications infrastructure. Because I'm telling you, if it's operated for a profit, then that is going to produce inequities and be an inhibitor to everyone's access to the broadband economy in the future. So that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions. So.
Thank you, Dora.
I have a few questions. If we get the $4 million grant you talked about last meeting, then we would not have to float revenue bonds and have that expense. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And if we do the pilot project, presumably there'll be a study of it. And I'm just guessing, but if there was like a low take rate, for example, would you be recommending we don't move forward?
So certainly if the finances aren't there to support it, then we won't move forward. On your first piece about the study, there's going to be an evaluation period that's going to occur continuously as we're rolling this out, and we're looking at network efficiencies, improving equipment setup and whatnot. So we'll be evaluating the project from beginning to end to make an informed decision and recommendation about how to move forward. You mentioned study, and this Thor made a reference to a previous study where council paid for a study to do this. We're not asking for any additional money for a study. Now, if council wants to be generous and provide more money to continue studying this topic, I welcome that opportunity. But in this process, we will implement a monitoring and evaluation approach to the work, because it's important that we're getting real-time feedback about the conditions and operability of the network.
And will our staff be hooking people up and doing billing and collections?
We will be doing billing and collections. From a billing collections perspective, there's already infrastructure built in that we can add this as an additional product or service to an existing account. So as we rolled out bills, they can be integrated into our current billing process, where there's an account set up for it, there's a monthly bill generated, and there's already a collections process for that. In terms of hooking people in, that's an operating agreement with Enveca and other third-party providers. We're looking to outsource some of that work just because of the scale of this project. We're talking about up to 300 homes. It's more cost effective for us to contract some of those services out and leverage capacity from vendors than versus us building out that capacity.
And my last question is, the good thing about government is we're not in it for profit, so we don't need to show a profit. We do need to break even. So I'm hoping, you've shown a $3 million profit after 20 years, that hopefully we can lower rates instead of showing, I'm not even sure legally, and the finance director can say that we can, make our enterprises profitable in the way that private business does.
Well, we as a government don't make our enterprises profitable the same way that private sector does, because our shareholders are the public. So our shareholder value, it's in the quality and efficiency of the service to be delivered, not economic dividends paid out as private sector. So, but however, we do have to make net income to reinvest in the systems. One of the challenges that we as a government has had is that we don't reinvest. We haven't been good at reinvesting in our infrastructure. Look at our water plant, look at our sanitary system. So part of the model, the business model for the municipal broadband is to build equity and build in reserves for reinvestment into our municipal broadband. Just last week, I've had an extensive conversation with the team about future-proofing this network, acquiring equipment that is either easily upgradable to future technologies or swappable with other devices that meet the needs of the future. Right now, we are in a technology environment where 1 gigabit of internet speed is suitable. But I think in just a few years, we're going to be in the multi-gigabit requirements sector. And so we're looking at equipment that is upgradable to be able to deliver even faster speeds and foolproofing this. So that's where the net income and the profit comes into play, because we need to have resources to be able to make those upgrades and those improvements or investments.
Thank you.
Lisa, go ahead.
Okay, I have several questions, and I know we're already up against time, but the first thing I'd like to say that for me, a balanced business plan, it includes reasons why something's a good thing to do and reasons why something might not be a good thing to do. And I'm not hearing that other side of this. So Josue, why shouldn't we do this?
It's certainly more work for me, more work for the team. We're entering a space where we'll actually be competing for companies. We'll be competing with Spectrum, which is a giant telecom. And while I don't have any the documentation to prove that they were behind the legal efforts to ban all community broadband effort, I think that they had a role to play. And so we're up against private sector companies that are much bigger than we are, and we'll have some challenges operating in that space. In terms of service delivery, there are some challenges in how we'll provide the service. There's some properties that can be served through the existing infrastructure, like the power poles. There'll be others that we will need to build out new infrastructure. But the fortunate side of that is that we can roll those out in phases. So there's also a learning curve here. There's a lot of capacity to be developed, know-how that we would need to develop, at least I'll speak for myself and my team. Obviously, this for Thor is not an issue, as this is what he does every day, provide broadband and data services to his clients and partners as a council of government agency. So I mentioned three areas. One is the know-how, the expertise, and that's a human resource capability. There's an economic market competition that we don't compete with providers. We don't compete with other providers for water, for electricity. So this is a new space. There's also a customer service piece to broadband that's new. There's network issues. Right now, if someone calls and say they have a power outage, well, that's easy for us. We can know if there's a power outage. If they call us to ask, well, I don't have internet, that requires a bit more complicated customer service piece. And I'm having conversations with Thor and the team about how do we build in that customer service to be able to troubleshoot. So one of the technology platforms that we're looking to adapt is being able to provide everything. Something that works out of a box. They get a box, they plug in, and it just works. And if they have an issue with it, customer service on our end can troubleshoot it directly out to the port. So there's some customer service, some technology aspects that we don't have that we would need to build, but we're confident we can build.
So I have one other question. You know, I know that everyday difficult decisions have to be made about what's going to get done and what's not going to get done. I will raise my hand probably as at least that one council person who's raised very marked concerns about the capacity of the team. So as this project launches, what would the members of our village team not do because they are working on this project? What are the opportunity cost losses that will pull our people onto this instead of something else?
Mm-hmm. Well, the way that we're structuring the rollout of this up to 300 homes, a lot of the time, the opportunity cost is coming from what else I could be doing versus having these meetings, being involved in the RFP process. I've tried to limit the workload burden on the other teams and bring them in as needed and where their expertise is key. So from just the up to the 300 homes, we're talking about primarily my time, and then there'll be some time spent on the billing side. So what else I won't be doing? I think it's all relative. Sure, I could probably walk more sidewalks and issue more placard cards, which is something I'm not something that I want to be doing. We're building out the capacity for someone else to be doing that. But there's other economic projects that I could be pursuing, grant opportunities. This particular project for me and how I organize my work, I organize it in 3 buckets. I've got the strategic development that are forward-looking. What are the things that we need to invest our time and resources now so that we are better off in the future? The second bucket is what do we have now that we need to maintain and ensure that that is working? That's the work involved with most recently was identifying those water leaks. Just over the last 2 weeks, we've been monitoring that water savings from having fixed that water leak on Dayton Street. Just that project there, we've saved 92,000 gallons per day. So that's that second bucket of maintaining what we have, improving the efficiency of what we have. And the third bucket is project coordination management, team management, resource management within the organization. That's all that administrative work that takes up a lot of time. HR things that take up a lot of time. I'm looking to hire a chief. That's a big deal. That is a human resource management function. So this project for me falls into the strategic initiatives that are forward-looking. I see it as an investment. We invest in better broadband infrastructure. We're going to be more attractive to businesses so we can have greater job creation. We're going to allow our residents to have access to better and broader labor markets, which end up contributing to the bottom line because as more of our residents are working and earning higher wages, they're contributing higher income taxes that support village government and schools. So to me, I think this is key to the economic development strategy that we as a team have. When you pair it with the permit, the building department that we're doing to facilitate and streamline that economic development piece. It's part of that overall strategy that we're looking to build a more resilient, vibrant local economy.
Thanks, Josue.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Yes, this is Tim Barhorst. I would add that the jobs that the project alone is creating would be very desirable as a direct result of the build out. And during the build out, there would be quite a few employees and employers involved. So there's quite a bit of tax revenue there just in the short term.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Anything else? Okay, well, I think this was a great discussion, and we're going to have an opportunity to discuss this again at the second reading. But I think, Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll on the first reading.
Sure. Krieger.
No.
Curlis.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. McQueen.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. 2021-26. Judy, let's go ahead and read that ordinance and by title only as well.
All right, this is creating a new fund for the purpose of receiving and expending American Rescue Plan dollars.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Great. Okay, Josue, is this you or Matt?
It's both of us. Matt can take the lead. It's very straightforward, just like the CARES Act money, where in order for us to receive and appropriate those, both the revenue and expenses for that, we're required to have legislative action from an authority from council to be able to establish those funds and appropriate the funds and expenditures to meet legal requirements.
Okay. Matt, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'd just like to add this. We were awarded $392,000, and that will come in two tranches. The first was received at the end of July, and the second will come 1 year later. There is, among the $392,000 that was decreased due to the addition of townships added into the allocation. The window for applying for the grant funds was actually extended to the end of this month. If townships or municipalities don't apply, there could be a redistribution and more funds added later. So,
okay. Thank you, Matt. Any questions or comments? Okay, well, I'm guessing we don't need to vote on it. We'll see it on the second reading, and we'll move on to Resolution 2021-38. We can do that by title only.
All right, and before I read it, Josue, can you give Laura co-host privileges, please? Okay, this is Resolution 21-38, authorizing and directing the village manager to execute a letter of intent and to negotiate and execute a contract for sale of a portion of real property owned by the village of Yellow Springs.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Josue?
Thank you, Brian. Previously, we brought before council an easement authorization to provide Cresco an easement so that they could construct or have access to additional land for their expansion. Planning Commission has approved expansion of Cresco Labs, a project expansion that could deliver more than 120 jobs. This piece before you is for authorization for us to move forward with negotiating what are 5.2 acres of additional property for Cresco to consider buying to further expand their both production and processing capabilities here in the village. So right now we are seeing a growth of 120 jobs with current expansion, with additional expansion on the horizon, which is great economic development activity for the village.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll.
Yes, McQueen,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Curlis,
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Resolution 2021-40. We'll do that by title only.
Okay, this is authorizing the village manager to apply for a grant from the Board of County Commissioners for a road extension at the Center for Business and Education.
All right. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay. All right, Josue.
All right, Brian, thank you. As you know, we have 22 acres of property at the CBE. One of the challenges of marketing the property is accessibility all the way around the 22 acres. With the development opportunities or development that's happening at the CBE, you just voted on a letter of intent and exploring a sale of the property for additional expansion of Cresco. We think it's important to look at opportunities to enhance or add to its infrastructure at the CBE. And one of those opportunities is doing a road extension of springways around the remaining 22 acres would make the property more accessible and marketable, which we can market and promote and attract more businesses to locate to that space and develop at that site. So this resolution is a requirement for us to submit any grant application for road expansion projects to the county. We have cost estimates that this application that the road extension may cost up to $200,000 or maybe a little over $2,000. We're looking at putting an application that has minimal cost implication to the village. So we want to ask for the full $200,000 that the grant's able to provide. This primarily to get the grant in. We're not, these applications don't score very well, and road extensions don't get a whole lot of money in the county. Just Beaver Creek, for a similar project, received a quarter of their funding. But we want the opportunity to submit a proposal and see what we get. And if we get something, we'll consider if we're able to fill out the project completely or a significant portion of it. If not, then we don't lose anything by trying.
Okay. And FYI, that also required an accompanying letter from me, the council president. So that's been written as well. Any questions or comments? Okay, not seeing any. So Judy, let's call the roll.
Yes, Curlis.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. 2021-41, title only.
Yes, this is authorizing and directing the village manager to execute a letter of intent and negotiate and execute a contract for purchase of real estate from the estate of Edward W. Oxley.
All right. Can I get a motion?
So
I'll move. A second.
Okay. Josue.
Thank you, Brian. This is for us to acquire the entrance to the Keith Alleyway off Corey Street. I'm surprised that this lot is owned by Oxley and has been owned by Oxley for a very extended period of time. It hasn't been an issue until the Oxley passed, and this lot was up for sale, and the owner or potential owner considered putting parking or fencing, and that's just a lot of risk to our infrastructure. So we're able to have a discussion with them about acquiring the property and retaining the alley intact as it currently is. So this would allow us to continue those conversations with the Oxley estate to acquire the alley. It comes at an incredible rate. We're looking to do this for $1,000.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All right. Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll then.
Yes, Krieger.
Yes.
Stokes.
yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and our last piece of legislation is Resolution 2021-42. Let's do that one by title only as well.
Okay, this is authorizing the village manager to join the Power a Clean Future Ohio group to support the development of the Climate Action and Sustainability Plan.
All right, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
Okay. Mary Ann, are you talking about this one?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So Power Clean Future Ohio is an organization that I found out about earlier this year. It is a consortium of Ohio environmental organizations as well as other kind of organizations concerned about climate change. And the purpose of the organization is to help municipalities in Ohio develop climate action plans, look at ways to reduce their greenhouse gas usage in ways that work for that particular community. They offer technical resources for renewable energy, transportation, energy efficiency, and land use plans. So by joining this coalition, we would be, I think, probably the 18th Ohio community to join. Columbus, Cincinnati, Toledo, some of the bigger towns are in it, some smaller municipalities as well. And it would enable us to gain resources that this organization has. So I thought it made sense to wait until we were actually working on a climate action plan to bring this forward. And so I'm requesting that we approve this resolution so we can take advantage of the resources that this organization provides.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
Is there a cost to it?
No.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, it looks wonderful to me. And I would have liked to have read that resolution out loud, but it was kind of a long one. So well put together. If there are no other questions or comments, Judy, let's go ahead and call the roll.
Yes, McQueen.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to move into citizen concerns. This is the time on the agenda where we'll take comments up to 3 minutes on any item that's not on the agenda. So do we have any citizen concerns? Okay. All right. I am not seeing any hands or signals. So let's go ahead then and move into our special reports. And I believe first up, we've got Emily Seibel from Yellow Springs Home Inc. Hey, all right. Yes, there we go.
Hi, I'm Emily Seibel. I'm the Executive Director of Yellow Springs Home Inc. And I need to share my screen to be able to go through this. So I just want to make sure that's enabled. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
All right, great. So I invite you this evening to share in our joy of providing lasting affordable housing. And in the interest of time, Judy Kentner and other council members, I will go through these slides quickly, and they're also included in your packet, and I'd be happy to follow up with any questions that we don't have time for today. So with that, I'm going to start the timer and try to stick to 5 minutes. So here is a snapshot of our strategic plans. Here, you can just see the issue that we're facing. Investing in affordable housing is key to answering the question, what kind of community we want to be. not only today, but for future generations. Investing in permanently affordable housing is also forward-looking as a strategic investment in our future and is key to economic development, but also to being the kind of community we want to be. So I've updated this slide, the urgent Yellow Springs affordability gap. And I used 2020 median home sale prices. I think it's worth noting that in today's market, this median home sale price would be over $300,000, just based on my quick look last week. I think it's also noteworthy that in 2020, for the very first time, more than half of renters in the village of Yellow Springs are now housing cost burdened, which means they pay way too much in housing costs to live comfortably, and often must choose between basic provisions to make ends meet. And then while many in the village struggle with quality affordable housing, many more are displaced. I think we all know someone or many people who have simply had to move away because they can't afford to live here. And for those of you who attended the Glen Cottages community celebration, you met some of those residents. So a growing gap is a real opportunity for public investment and intervention as the affordable housing crisis continues to grow. The other thing I wanted to point out is that in our affordability analysis, using this example, you can see there's just a huge gap between affordability at the top of low and moderate income and what the market bears. But that's also with our really historically low interest rates. So, you know, as conditions change, I think this gap is going to rise. And here is our mission. We believe that housing is a fundamental right. Here is a snapshot of 2020 accomplishments. I'm pretty amazed what a dedicated volunteer board and committees and a small but mighty staff of 4 can accomplish together. This is Janet Schuler. She's lived in Yellow Springs for many decades, and she was our first client to go through the USDA low interest mortgage program, but for a refinance so that she could stay in the home that she loved, but with a lower housing payment. And she was also the recipient of Carol M. Peterson repair grant funds. Here is what the 1-acre site of Glen Cottages looked like last November. And here is a photo from a couple of weeks ago. We identified gaps in the local housing market using our own data, public outreach and input, and also the 2018 Housing Needs Assessment. And we identified the full spectrum of gaps, which is really 0 to 120% of area median income. Our market starts right now just a little over 120% of area median income. And so we created products going from less than 50% of area median income all the way up to 120% through 5 different housing products and 4 housing types. We received 56 applications just in the month of June for 4 slots that we had available for affordable rentals. And appraisals came in at $208,000 to $218,000 for the for sale 3-bedroom starter home products that we put together that range from 887 square feet to 1,084 square feet on small lots. But our sales prices range from $93,500 to $149,500. So it's just a big difference in terms of affordability. And in 2019, Planning Commission approved the pocket neighborhood zoning designation. And that same year, the project was fully funded with nearly $1.5 million in grants and loans. And despite a lot of challenges, including COVID-19, skyrocketing lumber pricing, and a lot of different kinds of delays, we are thrilled to be at this point and so grateful for the village contribution of $60,000 in waived tap fees. Here you can see the project sources. This is for our 12-unit project. And here you can see, that first one was the uses. This one is the sources. And I just want to really point out all of the little slivers representing less than 10% of the total development cost. Not all of the little slivers are are the local funds, but a lot of them are. And that's really the important layer of funds that when we can work with the village, we can make those much bigger pie slices come to fruition. So I just want to make sure that we're engaged in a good conversation about, how much your investment can leverage with projects like this. And then thank you to everyone who attended, came out, and to council members Brian Hausch and Mary McQueen for speaking, and to Laura Curlis for donating plants. We're also building out our project management capacity, and we're already underway planning our next projects and look to you for input as we navigate our future. Here is another client snapshot. Julie McCowan owns a home on Cemetery Street, also a Village and Home Inc. collaboration, and she has worked for more than 25 years at Friends Care Center. Here are some client first program metrics. Here's another client quote. This is to highlight the less visible but incredibly important and transformative financial coaching work that our program manager does. We continue to push for housing stability and appreciate the source of income protection legislation. That was so encouraging and exciting to hear that discussion earlier tonight in the council meeting. We hear from people routinely, including some of the renters in our portfolio who have had Section 8 vouchers in the village and couldn't use them because they couldn't find a landlord to take them. So this is really timely, and whatever we can do to be supportive. I jotted down a couple of things you said earlier, Brian, we're happy to do. I won't dwell on this, but we also launched this coalition with a lot of great partners, including the Village of Yellow Springs. And I'm very, very excited about this work. We've been meeting bi-weekly to lay the groundwork and foundation, and you'll hear more. And then here's the last slide, and this is really looking to the future. We're already planning, well underway into planning our our fiscal year 2022 to 2023 affordable housing projects and client programs. And the more that we can align and get out ahead of them, the greater our chances are to maximize leveraging outside funding. We definitely encourage a collaborative process. And we encourage funding the Affordable Housing Fund with one-time funds, such as a set aside from the ARPA fund allocation, as is feasible, as well as recurring funds and sources such as the lodging tax. And I just want to give an example of this. We so appreciate the swift action to set aside $12,000 in the fiscal year 2022 Village of Yellow Springs Affordable Housing Fund, which is a local 5% match for our application to USDA for their housing preservation grant program. It was a long shot. We really kind of scrambled around to put it together in a month. And it was our first attempt at securing this grant. And I'm absolutely thrilled to announce tonight for the first time that your investment helped us to secure our full funding request of $200,000, which is nearly half of the allocation in the entire state of Ohio, to help with repairs for homeowners who are struggling with affordability right here in Yellow Springs. So that's the kind of collaboration that we want to do moving forward. We are here to help meet the affordability needs and challenges. We know that they're growing, and we invite a joint planning session, but also any other ways that we can encourage and facilitate this kind of collaboration. So I invite any questions you have, and I will stop sharing my screen right now. Maybe, if I can figure it out.
Congratulations.
Wow, that's amazing news, Emily.
Wait, I don't think oh, there we go. Okay.
Wow, very exciting. Are there questions or comments for Emily?
Yes, I have a question. How would you see the village being most effective, I guess I would say, village government being most effective in terms of planning with home in terms of supporting Home Inc.'s plans? How would that look?
Well, I think, we're definitely interested in providing sort of the technical lift, if you will. But I think that it's important that we sit down before we finalize our strategic plans and budget for the next fiscal year. And that's for both the village and Homemaker. So I think if we had a joint planning session, that would be really helpful. The waived tap fees are really incredibly helpful, not only for the budget, but also to leverage additional investments. And then funding is the big one. That can definitely make a huge difference, as well as identifying land. That's the other key challenge, obviously, in a village of our size. But I think making sure that there's a sort of two-way communication so that we aren't surprising you with our requests, but also that you get a chance to have public input and weigh into our strategic priorities, I think is what would be most effective.
So Emily, related to land, I think it's good to flag, and I think it was in your presentation, but you've mentioned that I guess lower cost land can make a big impact on these applications.
Yes. Yeah. So one of those, like when you looked at the pie, and this is really a rental housing pie, homeownership has its own set of unique challenges. But for both homeownership and rental, Federal Home Loan Bank is usually a big chunk of recurring funding. They might fund somewhere between 25 and 50,000 a unit. And that funding is becoming increasingly competitive because of the way that the big tax credit projects are being structured. And so our point margins are getting thinner and thinner, and you get the most points for donated land, and then you get some points for partially donated land. And so donated is best. And then obviously that also helps as a in-kind source to the project, lower the overall cost per unit, which helps in a variety of different ways.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Well, as a comment, this is Kevin. I'm sorry, Laura. Just wanted to say, Emily, I appreciate whenever I hear and see presentations by Homemaker, I appreciate the expertise and all the little things. And I'm a fan, and I encourage folks to get with Homemaker when they have certain needs. And I think the comment you just made about rental homes is something that I think we as council have expressed some interest in. I look forward to maybe some opportunities there. And with respect to our goals, as we'll probably talk about later, you'll see that, we've thought about some of the kind of things that you do in terms of our goal setting for the upcoming future. So I look forward to continuing the collaboration. Thank you.
All right. Laura?
I would just want to say congratulations on all your accomplishments. So glad you got that grant and on the pocket neighborhood. On that point about land, though, I mean, we could give you land, but it may not have the infrastructure that infill would have. Mm-hmm. So it adds to the cost, too, if it's not the right kind of land that has pretty ready access to infrastructure.
I mean, infrastructure is always a consideration and is unique on a case-by-case basis, but it is certainly, one of the things that would be a big consideration early on when looking at a budget. I think probably just to underscore what Brian flagged earlier, I actually think for the first time, it's getting competitive enough, and it will continue to get more competitive for that, in particular, Federal Home Loan Bank funding. But I don't know if it will be possible to get their grants moving forward without some points for land, either donation or reduction in cost. I think it's going to be very difficult.
And I'm going to bring this up on new business, but do you have any thoughts about serving people in extreme poverty? I think that's one segment that we don't do particularly well, or maybe even at all.
It depends on what you mean. Do you mean like 0 to 35% of AMI, or do you mean homeless population?
Homeless population.
Yeah, so I think that is a broad discussion that is worth having, but we don't have time to get into now.
I just want to put that in your head. Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
I just also want to say congratulations, and it's amazing. I like that accomplishment infographic as like a mind blower of all that's accomplished. You know, I realize I don't know if you ever look at projects that are like in the township or land that may be less expensive than right in the village.
We are certainly open to exploring land in the township, and obviously that's a great consideration. So far, the land that we have identified in the township has had some challenges with zoning, density, septic, utilities, that kind of thing. However, that doesn't mean that there isn't some opportunity in Clifton, or, you know, I mean, we're going to continue to uncover every rock. And then we also partnered with Agraria last year and raised some funds for them to do an initial engineering and architectural plan for some housing for their employees.
Thanks, Emily.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else? All right, awesome work, Home Inc. team. Thank you so much. And we appreciate the update, and we will be talking about some joint goal setting, I think, soon. All right, thanks, Emily.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. So the other special report we have is from our treasurer clerk, Judy Kittner. So Judy, take it away.
All right. And Josue, if you want to do the screen sharing thing with the chart when we get there, that'd be great. All right. As of June 30th, 2021, we have under active investment $10,233,488. This is an increase of $372,676 since the beginning of 2021. Earnings from investments April through June were Raymond James, $1,421, and West Banco, $32,150. Your last treasurer's report was in early June of 21, just after we moved all funds out of Star, Ohio and into West Banco. Brad Drager's quarterly report is in your packet. That was written in mid-July, and it contains an analysis of current market conditions and projections. And that report notes Village's Raymond James holdings, which I have listed, but the big news there is really that yield to maturity at purchase is the same as yield to worst at purchase. So we're confident about the rate of return on those. The estimated annual coupon cash flow and annual cash flow are within $1 of one another. As of June 30th, 2021, the village has no funds in Star, Ohio, but retains the option to move funds there, which is why I keep the rate in the report. We have $491,182 in the investment account and $9,746,725 in the West Banco account. Presently, the Raymond James investment account CD, which are all CD purchases, are earning an average of 1.92% on a 1.46-year commitment. The West Banco rate is fixed at 1.25 with a nearly immediate availability. Star, Ohio, just as a comparison, is now earning 0.08%, which is just where it was at the June treasurer's report. Treasury rates are continuing a slow climb, which is a positive indicator of a return to more normal market rates. The operative word there is slow and not entirely linear. As of Wednesday, June 30th, Treasury rates were, the 1 month was 0.05%, the 1 year was 0.07%, the 2 year at 0.25%, and the 5 year at 0.87%. And then Josue showed you the chart with village account balances.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Any questions? Okay, well, once again, it's good that we got that money in that West Banco account. That has been a lifesaver. All right, well, if there are no questions, then I think we're going to move into old business. So actually, I'm going to do a time check here. I have decided that we are not going to talk about 2022 goals this evening because I made a commitment based on the last meeting that was very long that we would target finishing at 9:30. I do really appreciate what Mary Ann submitted goal-wise. I would encourage others to do the same because I do want to have some kind of document to work off of when we set up a discussion, a work session. So keep those ideas flowing, but we've got some really good ones. And so with that, we're going to move into the Glassfarm Wetland Restoration Study proposal. So Laura, I'll let you lead this off since this was based on your memo and some other information.
Okay, could I share my screen?
Should be able to if you're a co-host.
Okay. So where did it go? Sorry.
You see the arrow at the bottom?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Well, I just lost it, but let me just carry on. So the Glassfarm is property the village owns, and the Environmental Commission has, and several members of us, including Matthew Lawson before he left the chairmanship, and Michelle Burns of Tecumseh. We talked to some experts such as Mark Dilley at Mad Scientist and Brian Guerra with the Nature Conservancy in Columbus. And the Glassfarm has characteristics that are typical of wetlands, including hydric soils on a lot of it and high water table. They all think that it's worth studying, and this would be important information to have whether one wanted or thought it was advisable to consider a wetland restoration project, which could be environmentally very important, as well as possibly help us with stormwater management in the Dayton Street and Fairfield neighborhoods. But it would tell us if there is land that does not have hydric soils, does not contribute to a wetland restoration, and is maybe more or could be more suitable to construction, where that land is, like which acreage that would be. It would also tell you whether you would need any kind of national permitting if you did construct on the property, whether you were doing a sewer line, a water line, depending on where you brought it through. It would tell us what areas to avoid, for example, if we didn't want to disturb potential areas for wetland restoration. And then the final thing is, those of you who know, in the Environmental Commission, they voted unanimously to send this to council. Wetlands are increasingly rare, partly because they get developed, and there is a lot of money out there that can be used for restoration, including a brand new program that Ohio has called H2 Ohio, and just this year it became available to Southern Ohio. It was mainly up in the Lake Erie Basin, but now we in Greene County are eligible to put forward projects. So this would enable the village to look at the land for what is its highest and best use from an environmental perspective, and then see if there are other uses, what some of the important considerations would be. So this proposal would be to do what's called a conceptual study for wetland restoration, or a wetland delineation study. I mean, it's a little bigger than that, but it would tell you where the potential wetlands would be on that property. So that's basically the idea. The proposal would be for to issue an RFP so that companies similar to mad scientists, private or public, the Nature Conservancy, could make a proposal to do such a study for a cap of up to $15,000. The study hopefully would be done by early 2022, and then we'd have the information on which to make decisions, maybe in a more complete way, given what we know about the potential for wetlands there.
Okay, thanks, Laura. Marianne, I know you were involved or are involved in this. Do you have any comments?
Yes. So, as I think everyone knows, the remaining, whatever it is, 25 acres or 30 acres of the Glassfarm that's not taken up by the conservation area on the east or the solar panels on the west has been slated for housing. And Laura has pretty consistently talked about her interest in having at least part of that area be a wetlands. And as I've thought about it earlier this year, I thought that made sense to look at it. We've looked at it from a housing point of view, but we haven't looked at it from, I'm going to say, what the land wants to be. And when I'm thinking of that, when I'm saying that expression, I'm also including humans in that. So, because humans, even though we try not to, are actually a part of nature and live in nature. And to the degree that we can relearn how to do that, we will be much better off. So I encouraged Laura. I said that I would work with her on this. I contacted the Ohio Wetlands Association and talked to Mark Dilley, whom Laura has mentioned. We talked to him, we talked to Nature Conservancy, and as she said, Tecumseh Land Trust was involved in the conversations, as were a couple former Environmental Commission members. So when Laura made her, as well as Josue, we had a meeting with Josue and some of the people. So at our last Environmental Commission, Laura came back. She had made a proposal at the previous meeting, and we voted, the Environmental Commission voted unanimously to recommend to Village Council that we do a wetlands delineation study. In the process of thinking about this, Catherine Zimmerman, who is the chair of the Environmental Commission, mentioned that one of the people she worked with in the film that she did called Hometown Habitat is a man, Steve Applebaum, who's an environmentalist. He does wetland studies and he does natural renaturalization and helps housing developers see how they can build houses in concert with natural areas. And so I contacted him, as did Catherine, and I had mentioned to Laura early on that what I would like to see, if possible, is that if we did a wetland study and there was evidence that it would be good to turn some or whatever portion, return some of the Glassfarm to a wetlands to renaturalize some area, that we also then look at what might be possible in terms of what's called a conservation development. A conservation development is where there are houses and they're clumped together closely and they're integrated with a natural or renaturalized area. So we contacted Steve Applebaum, who indicated that this the Glassfarm potentially could be a project for that. Of course, we don't know at this point. So the idea that I had from our conversation and at the Environmental Commission was to fund a wetlands delineation study. See what we get out of that. And then depending on where that goes, also look at what it would and what would be the potential for a conservation development? And we got some information about the costs of both of those. So I understand that the wetlands study was not something that we had talked about. It wasn't on our goals for this year, but it is something that I think that we should do regardless of whether it gets funded this year or gets funded next year. I also want to say something because I understand that at a neighbor meeting, Laura, you made some complaints about me and other people on council that I think was very inappropriate. And what I understood from a few people was that you accused me of controlling the Environmental Commission for my own ends, doing backdoor dealing to keep this off the agenda, and that my experience with housing was sort of getting in the way of my looking at the wetlands issue. I find that very disturbing that you did this at a public event. And frankly, I don't think we would be at the place with this proposal if I hadn't told you that I would work with you on it. And I just want to say that I think that was very inappropriate, and I did not like getting that feedback.
Well, Mary Ann, this is the first I've heard of this, and I'm sorry that you feel that way and you didn't come talk to me earlier about the secondhand information you heard. So, Mary Ann, this study, it wasn't on the agenda actually initially in the first draft that I saw for tonight's meeting. And I'm glad that Brian and you decided to put it back on. So thank you for that. I think that housing has long been your goal. As a matter of fact, the Glassfarm, there's a plan in the comp plan that shows it built out as high density, which no plan has ever recommended for that property other than the comp plan. I think it's time that we look at the land from the ground up and see what it can support, or if it could be a high quality wetland, why not restore it as that? If there's some acreage left that could be used for housing, for conservation development, I certainly would support that. And I said I would work with you. But from my point of view, the first step is to do the study and we find out. Look, I'm perfectly prepared to accept the fact that if there is no wetland potential there, well, let's build it out as some kind of housing if that's what the community wants. But at this point, we don't know, and we haven't really known. We've never done this study before. So I hope we can do that. Instead of going at it like how much housing could we put there, let's first ask what's the wetland potential. And I'm really concerned about stormwater management in that area of town. So I very much want to know whether this could help with stormwater management as well.
So it sounds like to me that, Laura, you and Mary Ann are in agreement that a study is the next step, as the Environmental Commission is also referred to. I want to talk about something process related, and it also relates to, because I heard several people indicate the same thing that Mary Ann indicated. But I want to explain that the reason why this did not originally go on the agenda is because I asked the question, is it urgent? It's not on our 2021 goals. It is not something we budgeted for. And in fact, and Josue can speak for himself, but he specifically asked at agenda planning, do we need to add on yet another thing when we're still dealing with COVID, when we still have all these other goals in line? And so I guess I, like Mary Ann, was not happy to hear that specifically, and I heard this directly from several people, your comment that it's the Brian, Mary Ann, and Josue show, and that we're keeping you from getting anything on the agenda. So I am also very disappointed to hear those kind of comments being made. And I, again, want to explain that I think we've all agreed as a council that we don't have to tackle everything the minute that it comes up. And this seems like something to me that could certainly be on our 2022 goals.
So Brian, you never asked me, like when you were doing agenda planning, because I don't see it as a new thing at all. The Glassfarm and its development have been on the goals and on the agenda for a long, long time. So this is one more step toward finding out information about what's there literally on the ground so that we make decisions.
Which no one's disagreeing with. But again, the issue is, why does it have to be on the agenda tonight, funded now? Why can't that be part of our goals discussion for 2022?
Why does well, why not? It's only $15,000. We spend hundreds of thousands on lots of other things.
Okay, well, one reason why not, I just expressed, which I value, is that our village manager says that our village team is dealing with so many things right now, this was not planned for. So,
and we can start a whole new enterprise, but we can't issue an RFP for $15,000, really. This is why I feel like somewhat obstructed. And a commission has been studying this for months, and they have unanimously moved this to council for $15,000. We're not doing the work. We're just issuing the RFP. I've got the RFP basically written. Well, I don't see what the big deal is, given that we have time to do a whole bunch of other new things.
Yeah, things that were on our goal list and that we planned for. So and also I looked at your timeline. I mean, it has been, I guess, since July, and then we had, some time off. But yeah, again, I guess, I think we've talked about it. We've expressed some concerns around communication of this idea. I hear what you're saying, that you feel that, you're being thwarted. I don't see that at all. But I think we should go ahead and I'm going to make or call for a vote on whether council wants to fund this, I guess, today. So Judy, can you call the vote?
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Because this comes on the heels of a fairly other recent unplanned, unbudgeted investment on an environmental related project, right? So can someone quickly help me understand how this assessment fits in with the other piece of work that's going on right now for an environmental plan?
Lisa, this is Kevin. Can you tell me, please, what unfunded other environmental thing you're referring to?
A community action plan and sustainability plan. So,
which is not a budget, which is not a hit on the budget, by the way.
$30,000 hit.
But I think Lisa's asking, Lisa, we can't hear you right now.
I'm not disputing that project. We voted on that. That passed. The person was hired. The ship sailed. I just am trying to understand how this work might time into that. That would influence my vote as far as, do I vote yes tonight, or do I say let's put it into the next year? That's why I'm asking.
Well, I'll give you my take, Lisa, on that. Part of what the climate action plan will have in it will be how we manage village-owned properties, in particularly looking at them in terms of stormwater management and renaturalizing properties, in part, like Laura is talking about, for wetlands, in part for human use. So I'm not aware of the urgency of this for this year, and I think it does fit under a larger climate action plan, but that doesn't mean that we have to wait a long time to do it. So I'll stop there.
Well, and if I could just throw something in, I'll use the phrase elephant in the room. There's two elephants in the room. There's what do we do with Glassfarm? Is it going to be a wetland focused primarily environmental? Is it going to be set aside for housing? Because we would like to have some land that we own that we can put I'm envisioning an apartment complex. This conservative conservation development sounds intriguing. I know there were comments about this particular study that suggested also looking at potential construction is a thing that could be considered later. I would just wonder, Marion, I think you said y'all looked at the cost for each of them, but is it possible to do, whenever it's done, one study that does both, that looks at the full spectrum of the possibilities as opposed to just looking at the environmental wetland related stuff now, and then thinking about considering the degree to which construction could happen on the property?
So the advice from Steve Applebaum is to do a wetland study first. Then you know what areas might be converted into wetlands, as well as whatever else would be renaturalized. And then do a conservation development study to see where housing might fit into that.
I mean, I understand the rationale, the suggestion. I just don't know why you couldn't put forth the extra effort if you have the right personnel to also consider the quality of the soil for construction. That's my concern. Why couldn't we do one larger study instead of two moderate studies?
Well, there are very few agencies that do the latter. There are a number of agencies that'll do wetland delineation studies, but there aren't very many that will do looking at that with a conservation development. And that's, you know how we do. We like to chop things up and have this specialty and this specialty rather than the holistic thing. So the Glassfarm so far has almost solely been looked at in terms of housing. And now the wetland study will look at it in terms of what the natural history of the land and what it might become.
Okay, so I'm sorry to hold so much of the airtime, but Laura, but the information in the packet, you said, I believe that this study would also look at other past studies. And now, Mary, you just said that there's been studies or conversations about Glassfarm from a housing perspective. Are there housing related studies that this potential project could also bring in to evaluate?
Yeah, Kevin. So there have been past studies, but you get the answer for the question you asked. So the question from past studies is how much housing could be built and what's possible, right? Mm-hmm. So some of those studies did scientific measurements like soil borings to see what was the soils, the water table. So the winning bidder on this RFP would take that data that's already in our archives from at least a couple of past studies and include that. It's very valuable information that they would pull in.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I'm just going to throw it out here and Matt can weigh in, but maybe we could consider amending your vote to request that Matt or Josue determine that they can certify the funding for such a study.
Yeah, I have a question for Matt. How much is in the commission's line item?
Why don't you give me a minute? I'll look that up for you. I can get back to you.
Yeah, I don't want to drain it, but it is almost the fourth quarter, and we do have a line item for that.
Well, we also have Wheeling Gaunt to think about, which is part of the manager's report. Well, I think I'm going to go back to seeing if there's interest in funding this in 2021 or not. So I guess that's the question on the table. Judy, you want to call the roll?
Krieger.
She's muted.
Lisa, we didn't hear you.
She's muted.
No.
No. Curlis.
Yes.
Stokes,
No.
McQueen,
Yes.
Hausch.
No. But I do want to support this in 2022. So, and I don't think anyone that's saying no tonight is suggesting this isn't a bad idea. But we need to do a better job of staying to our goals. And I respect that Josue brought that up. So, all right. Next up, we are going to talk about the Community Citizen Review Board, specifically the memo that Laura submitted. So, Laura, I'll let you kick this one off.
Well, simply, Brian, I think that we ought to reconsider Exhibit F, which you wanted to remove last time. And the reason that I think it should be reconsidered is that you didn't like one comment, which can be removed. Comment the answer to question 2 on page 16 can be removed. But I think we should restore all the citizen comments, and there were about 20 of them from the community that would be very valuable. That's the first point. The second point is I and Lisa both want to be very involved in bringing any legislation forward, which means that I would like to, as soon as we can do it, meet with the lawyer who we're going to hire to work on the review and possibly legislation coming forward. So I would like that meeting to happen soon. Thank you.
Okay. Lisa, did you want to make any comments?
Sure, I have a couple. I agree that was also to Laura's memo, that was an interesting vote, although to clarify my vote, which really wasn't meant to reflect me being confused or not understanding the process of a vote, but rather to clarify that I felt that whatever had been reviewed was what should go forward. And so if that whole artifact had already been reviewed, then go ahead and let that go forward. I don't feel it would influence the legal review one way or the other. I am absolutely glad if it's helpful in the process to answer any preliminary questions that the attorney has in looking at the documentation. I think it's helpful to have context. And I'm certain that everyone in council will eventually want to hear the thoughts from this person. I also want to respond to the memo from Kevin Stokes that, I read as saying, let's pull the plug on this. The proposal was referred to as heavy-handed. I've been following this for a long time. I don't perceive it as heavy-handed. That may be a matter of perspective. However, I think that pulling the plug on it at this point, or even characterizing it as heavy-handed or not, is based on incomplete information. For me personally, until I get feedback from a person with this specific legal expertise, I don't know how it's going to end up. I don't know how this proposal is going to change over time. Once we get that feedback, once we have additional conversations about that, it's going to change shape. And it's going to take a little bit of time. I think that has to be the next step before we even can have any other conversations about it. And my concern is having conversations about it while we're pending that legal review is just, to me, throwing fuel on fears or concerns that may or may not be merited. It's taking up our thoughts and energies for something where we don't have the answer yet. And so that's my perspective about the current proposal as it is. I believe it will change over time, and what we implement will probably be different. But I do strongly support implementing a citizen review board. We know that it provides a kind of neutrality from what we're reading about best practices that is a step more progressive and not out there in the wingman land than what we currently have in place. And I also think that in service to our new chief, whoever that chief is, we should honor the work and keep it going forward so that when we have that person interviewing or coming on board, we can have intelligent, informed conversations about this. I just want to say one more thing, and then I'll pass the baton. A lot of us have put, both community members, organization members, and some council members have put a lot of time into this work to get it to where it is now, even though it's not done yet. I have been concerned over the last couple of weeks that at its heart, this council does not want to move forward with a citizen review board. If this council does not want to move forward with a citizen review board, then let's just say that, and then we'll take it up again after the election, and we'll see if we have the same council, and we'll see how many votes we have. Personally, I want to keep moving it down the field, but if we don't have votes to keep doing that, tell us now, and we'll take it up again when we do.
Oh, first of all, Lisa, I appreciate your comments, but I think characterizing my memo as pulling the plug is also a little heavy-handed. What I am encouraging folks to do is look at the process we have in place right now. We have a process in place for fielding complaints against police. And so far for the last 12 months, it's been used exactly 3 times. I know that the general public thinks that there are a lot of complaints against police because there are a lot of comments on Facebook. But in terms of the official process that already exists with the policy and the form that are included in the packet, what I am proposing is for folks that have a complaint, at the end of the day, what you want to do is have a process for fielding complaints against police. I hope the end goal is to improve police. But the fact of the matter is we have a process. And for folks who, I don't know if folks are not familiar with the process, and again, Lisa, if you read the memo carefully, I say I don't have anything against the review board. It's the current iteration where we have to spend $42,000. At the rate we're going now with the complaints we've had, that's $14,000 per complaint. Now, I don't know if the complaints against police would ramp up once a CRB of any form is seated. But the fact of the matter is we have a process. Let's use that process. We can have citizens involved with a citizen review board. I'm not against that. It's why are we spending, again, talking about budgeted and non-budgeted items, why are we putting ourselves in a situation where we need to spend these monies where I don't see the need? And if there are that many complaints, I'd like to see them coming through the current existing process.
Kevin, thanks for that. And I dispute that budget number in the proposal. That's based on a certain volume, and the critical issue there and what best practices that we're hearing for citizen review boards are providing this neutrality of intake. And that is something I've been working on this for 3 years, right? So I certainly am aware of the current process. And so was the Justice System Task Force when they first started working on this project. That budget is kind of a high estimate, I think, that's based on a volume of work that might come through a neutral third party. And without starting to pilot this to see what the volume is, I don't think we possibly know the cost. If the volumes stay as low as they are now, it will be very inexpensive.
Well,
that's not a fixed price.
Well, Lisa, I do have to point out that when we went to look for outside counsel, I told you, I believe in executive session, what it was going to cost to get an outside counsel review. And the way the proposal is currently structured, you're looking at spending $400 an hour on an expert in personnel law or in police procedures if you have it through an independent third party.
Thank you, Brianne. What I believe we're talking about is not the cost of the legal review, which has been voted on and approved by this council. What I believe we're talking about is what is in the budget, in the proposal itself, there's a forecasted budget of what it would cost to operate.
Yeah, because it would come in.
And I believe that's right. And we were just estimating a certain volume.
Yeah.
Okay, Marianne, did you have anything you wanted to comment on with this?
So Brian, let me just jump back in real quick. This is Kevin. I'm sorry. I will listen to the recording, Lisa, but right after you started speaking, I got dropped off. I'm sure your comments are valuable and I appreciate them, but I'll have to listen later. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I would like for us to have space to talk about our thoughts, our concerns, our ideas about this. And I do think it makes sense before we have the whole blown proposal coming back to us. And we have, I think, like 10 minutes on this. But I have questions and I have concerns. I could write them down and send them to Lisa and Laura. But because I don't know that it makes sense to take it up right now, but I would prefer not to have a full-blown proposal come and then sort of pick at it. I'd rather be able to have in sort of an iterative process, I guess, where we could have input into it.
Well, from my clarification standpoint, I just want to make sure council is okay with Lisa, Laura, and I meeting with the attorney first the week of September 13th. And then I believe he's going to be available on September 20th to meet with all of council, get your ideas, and then he will be reconnecting with you in October, November timeframe.
So we haven't talked about, we haven't decided.
Is that what council wants to see?
We have not decided that yet, Brianne. Okay, so I have a few comments. One of those is, I guess I'm really confused by your memo, Laura, but without like getting into the, parsing of words and whatnot, I guess I don't understand what the rationale is for adding more pages for this legal review, which is going to mean costing more money. And so I want to make sure that things that are in there are actually relevant to what the lawyer needs to see for the legal review. So it sounds like with this Appendix F, sans the part about, collapsing our dispatch or whatever, that there's some interest in these other comments going in there. In my mind, the review should be of the legalities of the program itself. But anyway, if there's a reason why some of these comments are deserved of more $400 an hour time, then certainly we can talk about that. The second thing is, I'm very concerned, especially based on the tone of this memo, including the false allegation about revisionism. I am not comfortable with any one council member meeting with the attorney. And based on what Marianne just said, I think it's better for us to meet with the attorney as a council. I don't want to pull the plug on this. I'm committed to a community or citizen review board, but I think part of what might be bothering Kevin, not to speak for him, is certain influences that may taint the overall results. And I've seen this in a variety of rhetoric and memos and other things. And so I think it would be a much better process if council maybe met first to talk about concerns, then met with the attorney. But let's keep it focused on the legalities of this program. We can figure out internally how many people are on a board and all that sort of thing. But I think we're getting very off track on this proposal.
Yeah, and Brian, I perceive it that it's being redirected from a direction that the it started out as a demand of the demonstrators from the Black Lives Matter rallies last summer. And Lisa and I have been the primary sponsors of this legislation. We've had countless meetings that are documented in the exhibit. Look, any attorney can look. The exhibits are background so that they understand there was a process, where we've been, where we've come. I think citizen comments, most of which are from 365 members, are very important. The attorney knows that it's just background unless there's something that somebody said that is relevant to a legal issue. But this is all the work the community did. And it feels to me like it's being suppressed. And my memo, Brian, is true. I kept trying to get you to understand that 365 reviewed it twice, not once, and what was on the website was the first version. And I just felt like you didn't listen to me, so I had to write a memo detailing the timeline and what was said, and it influenced Lisa's vote, I feel. In any event, all that aside, it is a proposal that needs more formulation. And really, I feel like it's being jerked away from me and Lisa, who are the legislative sponsors. Not,
yeah, you know,
it will come to all of council for sure, and we have to be mindful of that. But we do not have legislative sponsors. And one of the challenges is no more than 2 council members can work on a project offline, right? So you guys have had that benefit. You guys have been involved. And, more importantly, the community has been involved. But to continue to talk about legislative sponsors as if Mary Ann didn't do a lot of work on this with the mediation program, as if I didn't continue to work on it. And I actually, as far as revisionism goes, I just found, I don't know if you've ever done any research about the history of this, but the June 15th, 2020 packet has a memo from Lisa and I saying that we want to start a Justice System Advisory Committee, and key to that is the Citizen Review Board. All right. That was a month before the demands came about. So it's just really frustrating to constantly hear that, basically you've done all the work. And, I think that ultimately is what it's come down to. And that really is not fair, given that a lot of people have contributed to this. Mary Ann.
Yeah, I'd like to move with this. And if we have to vote on what we do next, we'll vote on it. But I think we should decide on what is the next step going to be, or next steps.
All right. So I guess the thing we're voting on is whether we're going to meet with the attorney as a full council or 2 council representatives.
He's available September 20th or October 4th. I believe he'll meet with you either of those nights. Just let me know as soon as possible, because he has a very full schedule, and obviously we'd like to get him early in the agenda for the evening so that, he can go on about his day if he's got other meetings.
Okay.
I need a little more background. If he met at a council meeting, which I guess
it'd be by Zoom,
he would have presumably he would have reviewed it already, and he would be telling council what his assessment is, and we'd have time to
and give you time to ask questions about as you said, you've got several questions. So
I guess my frustration is I feel like he should meet with the 2 people who've been the most involved, no doubt, to understand where we've been, what we're trying to do, and not evaluate it in a vacuum. And not everything in there is obviously written in stone, none of it is. But, I feel like if this person doesn't have an understanding of kind of where we've been and what we're trying to accomplish, he's going to show up at this meeting with maybe a lot of misunderstandings.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Love the idea of where we've been in that context. I think that a broader group would give a more accurate background of that. Okay, so I think then, yeah, I think we just need to make a decision like Mary Ann said. So I guess, yeah, so maybe it's, I'll make a motion that, that all council members that want to be involved in meeting with the attorney can do that. Because I believe we can do it can we do it in an executive session, Brianne?
You're proposing legislation. It's
Okay,
not,
a public meeting.
I mean,
Okay.
it's not an attorney-client privilege discussion when you're talking about this is a legislative process that you're trying to bring forward.
Yeah, it's even better if it's not an executive session. I mean, people should be able to participate. Okay, so that's, I guess, what we're voting on, that all council members that want to participate in that meeting with the attorney can. So Judy, let's call the roll.
Did we get a second on that?
I second.
Second, okay.
Second is Stokes.
Yes.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So we have to like call a council meeting to do this? Is that what you're suggesting?
Or a work session, yeah. But not all council members have to participate. Okay.
Okay. All right, Curlis,
Yes.
McQueen,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yeah.
Stokes,
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes. Okay, thanks, everyone. Okay, manager's report. Josue.
Thank you, Brian. First on the updates, you might have seen our public notice about the youth center closing until today. We had one of our youth participants test positive, and so as a result of that, and we needed to take extra precautionary steps and follow the guidelines and close the program to allow for quarantining of all participants. So we expect to reopen this week. We only are aware of that one case, so glad it didn't become more than that. And as you know, we take our COVID precautions serious, whether they're here at the youth center, at the gym, or at the pool. So hence we needed to close the center. But we hope to reopen soon as the new school year begins. Brian, thank you for the note and your announcements on the pool season. We had a very successful pool season again. Thank you, Council, for all your support and the community for your continuous support of the pool. I will be back to Council asking for more money for the pool as we need to rebuild a new custom pump for the pool for next year. Other things that we've taken care of this reporting period, the no engine brake signs have been installed at the perimeter of the village. That's been something in the works for a couple months now. We've got that done. We've had new picnic benches built and installed on the grounds. That's to complement the tents and other spaces, park spaces in the village, as folks want to use more outdoor space while in the pandemic. We've removed invasive species brush at Glassfarm, so we continue that maintenance work at Glassfarm. On the water leak that we have been addressing over the last couple of weeks, I'm happy to report that the 4 out of the 9 leaks that were detected, we addressed 4 of them already. We have seen a reduction in water production and distribution to the tune of 92 gallons per day. So when you add that up, that's over 30 million gallons of water per day. So the study worked, and we're delivering on the success on that. The next items I have are a couple lengthy, but I'll make one of them short so we can move on to the important topics. They're all important, but I think the Willing Gaunt and the chief of police search will require a little more time. On the COVID cases, I'll just reiterate what you would have seen in the newspapers and the news coverage, that the cases are continuing to climb. Greene County was at a very high rate, if not the highest rate, for a couple of days of COVID cases. So the COVID spread and the Delta variant is still very active, and we remain on a high infection rate status based on the CDC protocols. On the CDC reporting guidelines. On Willing Gaunt, statue, as you know, we had received a proposal from the Willing Grant Committee for the final leg of the project. The final leg of the project ask is in total of $25,000 to get that completion. This is an event that an activity that we did not incorporate in our budget process last year. However, we understand the importance of it, and not just for the historical element what Willing Grant did for our community and what it means for our community moving forward. We think it's important, and we're committed to looking at the financial resources to make that contribution. We've already done some of this work. We've been working with Lisa and with her work through the commission. We've relocated the flagpole, the gas line, and a few other things that are totaling about $7,500. So I bring the request to council. What does council want to do around this request?
So, Josue, can you talk a little bit more about what kind of improvements are planned? Because my understanding is it's going to be a park of sorts.
Yes, and I'll let Johnny get into the details. It's a beautiful design. It includes a privacy area, a space for sitting and reflection in the space. The physical statue is mounted as a centerpiece with pavers and landscaping in the area. I don't know if there's more details to that. We had Cheryl Durgans provide a presentation at council. If you give me a minute, I can pull that up to give the visual of what it will.
No, I think okay. If you find it, but I think I just wanted to make sure we had it in our heads. So
okay. Mm-hmm. Johnny or Lisa Krieger, did I miss anything?
Johnny, do you have anything?
I just went over the plans with Nadia. The majority of the area that is bare out front will be hardscaped. I'm checking on the border situation between the sidewalk and the curb. There's 4 trees that are planned on being planted there, and Josue's right. It's kind of like you got to walk into an area to be able to see the statue and to be able to sit there and reflect on things and to basically meditate is what Nadia was talking about. The existing 2 trees are going to be there. We did move the flagpole. We moved the, I think it was a World War II memorial rock to the other side of the train station. We'll be removing the limestone rock around the building because they're going to do different landscaping up around the building. So what they're doing, the majority of everything that's being done will actually not be able to be mowed. It's going to be a hardscape.
Okay. So I know that they're getting ready also for an unveiling ceremony on October 2nd. So what kind of things would potentially need to be done between now and then, or what could be done?
To my understanding, with Nadia Malarkey, they're going to try to have the hardscape done, the limestone base done, the statue there, trees planted. They're going to put up a construction fence to where people cannot see what's going on until after it's unveiled. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yeah, that's my understanding. You know, one of the things that I think important, and thanks for bringing up the design because it's really so lovely. I mean, it's a real enhancement for the village and it's creating a gateway for coming into town. So although it's got a private area, it will be visible but protected. I mean, this has been such an incredible project. And yeah, that's really all.
I can also say the actual pavers, they are actually shut down assembly line and they are making the pavers specifically for this project because they wasn't going to be able to do it until next year.
Wow. Okay, so when we're talking about 25,000 Is this all cash or is there an in-kind component to that? I mean, so the 7,000 that you mentioned, Josue, is that included in the?
There's some of it would be, but most from what I have from the most recent proposal is a cash contribution. So I'll bring up the proposal so you have. I'm not sure if the committee shared this with you, but looking at the bean hardscaping and landscaping estimates, that includes that's totaling $25,000. Now, there's some of these things that I think that we can work with them to reduce some costs, like sales tax. If this goes through the village, then we don't pay sales tax, so that will be a savings there. I know that there's been some changes happening since we received this proposal. The estimate that I received was from June, so I imagine that there might be some adjustments in cost.
Okay. Okay.
And I hadn't seen this proposal. Art and Culture Commission didn't meet last month. So I think that's probably why it's just been going straight through Josue. I haven't seen this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so thoughts from council, because I guess it's a fairly urgent. Yeah, go ahead.
Brian, I have the full proposal that I received from Jerome. I'm going to share that as well, and this gives a breakdown of where the costs are. So the total cost is $49,000 and includes some in-kind contribution. From the village, the request is the $21,815 as cash needed from the village, with an additional $3,000 of in-kind. Our in-kind contribution has already been, our contribution includes both in-kind and cash expenditures, and that totals about $7,000. Johnny, is that your last estimate? I know there was some work since we last.
That's true. That's
okay. Florence, I see you've had your hand up. Did you have a comment?
I would need to unmute Florence here. All right, Florence, you should be able to unmute. Florence?
Huh. Well.
Do you want me? Are you able to see the document, Brian, or you want me to make it?
Yeah, no, I think I can see it.
Okay, because I can change the view on this.
Okay. All right. So I guess back to what thoughts do council members have?
What are the available budget lines for this?
To get to a precise number, I will have to get with Matt, but we're looking at some money from the commission budget. That's the commission's budget is what's currently readily available. I'll have to do some cost projections on the general fund professional services to get a good idea of what will incur as expenses over the remaining of the year. To get any figures from outside the commission budgets.
Okay.
Because it's an improvement to a village-owned park, does that create a different budget opportunity?
I had a financial meeting with Johnny about park budgets, and we have used up the funding for parks and recreations, which is also why we need to come back to council for the pool money. That's also in our parks recreation budget categories. So we're running tight on that budget currently. Right now, we can't pay for the pump. We'll have to come back to the council for more money for the pump. I'm also working, and I'm in conversations with local businesses about a grant contribution to the village. and I'm hoping to hear back from these parties that I've engaged over the next 2 weeks. So I think by next council meeting, I can, if you want to explore something outside of the council commission budget, you give me a figure, I can look at the budget and also follow up with the local businesses who express interest in both the pool and the Willing Gaunt to see what money we can come up with. Or if you have a target, we can work back from a target.
So there's 27,500 and some in the commission line item, and this council decided not to take up the environmental commission's proposal. So there's money to do this in that line.
I'm not sure that we have a whole 27,000, because we normally only put 25,000 for boards and commissions.
Well,
so I wonder what that other.
Matt can tell you.
Yeah.
There's 27,579 and 15 cents.
That figure is correct. I could go over the specific line items where those reside in, but council commissions, it's not a line item. It's actually in our budget as a department with several line items that make up the remainder. I can tell you that $15,000 is in refunds and reimbursements. Another sum of money is in special events, as well as operating supplies for council commissions as well.
Right. I know we spread it out into different, boxes, but all right. So you think we have 27,000? Because I know we only put in 25,000 a year. So I just want to make sure we didn't set that aside for something else.
No, that's correct. Within that 27,000 is also $2,500 that we've committed to the cost of living study. So we're looking at roughly 2,500 left. So from 25,000. So.
Okay. Okay, well, so it sounds like we have a potential budget. And Lisa, does that affect, was there a set aside for Arts and Culture Commission is that reflected?
No, we've been, because no. And we'll just have to be, know that we don't have money. And this is such an important thing that Art and Culture Commission and to the village. And, it's an improvement to a park. And I think it really is a good expenditure of the money, and it's late in the year.
Yep. Okay. Well, so why don't we go ahead and just make it official and do a vote? It sounds like there's a motion to support the funding request for the Willing Gaunt statue. And at least we know we have one budget, if not others. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, Angie, let's call the roll.
Perlis.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Hausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so Josue, you had a couple more items you wanted to talk about?
I do. I want to be sensitive to time. So how about we jump on to the Chief Search Committee? I think Laura had questions at the beginning. I put together a document and share in your council packet on the establishing the Citizen Advisory Committee to assist the village manager in the search and appointment of the Chief of Police. And I've also outlined a timeline.
Can you just go over that for the public's benefit, please?
Sure. Let me pull up the document and I'll pull that up. Okay, attached, you should be able to see that on your screen. I will create a citizen manager hiring committee consisting of 7 citizens appointed by the village manager. They will broadly represent the residents of the village of Yellow Springs. The committee will act as an advisory body to provide feedback and recommendations to the village manager on the candidate most likely to be successful in the position of chief of police. Committee members will use their perspective skills to assess candidates, keeping in mind the unique needs and interests of our village and its citizens, A primary goal of this committee is to represent a variety of perspectives to support the efforts of the village manager to ensure a good fit with our chief of police. The committee will conduct 4 to 6 meetings to accomplish these tasks. The tasks are to review the guidelines of village police, job description posting, provide feedback to the village manager, review candidate vetting, provide feedback to the village manager on criterion-based assessments, participate in interviewing top applicants and share impressions and scoring with the village manager, help with planning public forum and other community interactions with the final candidate. This is the working process and timeline. We've have a job description. We have a list of citizens that have reached out, folks that we reached out to. So we look to finalize that in the next couple of days. We plan to close the job announcement by September 24th, begin the screening session immediately that following week. Obviously, there'll be some pre-screening and happening prior to that, as well as we're receiving applications online. I've been contacted and I've received one formal application already. In October 11th to 25th, conduct final interviews and one public forum. And by November 5th, select a new chief of police.
So in the past, council has been very involved in this process, and I totally understand what the charter says and what it ultimately is the village manager's decision. But I just wanted other council people, and I see also the Yellow Springs News has their hand raised. So for example, I think council people, and maybe even each of us, should have some say in the choice of citizen participants on this citizen advisory committee, and that's been done in the past.
All right, let's come back to that. Jessica, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, this is Jessica Thomas with the Yellow Springs News. I wanted to know, since you mentioned that you already had people interested in being a part of the Citizen Advisory Committee and you had already reached out to folks, how do they represent the different diverse groups of Yellow Springs, income level, age, gender, race, etc.?
Without having the final list of the members, the compensation is fluid now, but I intend to cover have a representation of the residents of the village of Yellow Springs and all those aspects that you mentioned: gender, race, income levels.
Thank you.
Okay. So it sounds like more to come on that question. All right, so getting back to what Laura raised is related to council involvement. Lisa, were you going to make a comment?
I was just going to ask how broad is the search? Is this national? How's the strategy derived for where this is going to be posted?
Excellent question, Lisa. I've been looking at the benefits and any potential challenges of doing something broader than statewide. There's some implications of doing national search. For one, there's a credentialing issue when it comes to municipalities. We don't have our own credentialing body for police officers, unlike Dayton, who has their own police academy. So we rely on APATA for certifications and licensing of police officers. So that limits our ability to do that national search. There are states that have agreements and are able to accept credentials for law enforcement officers from different states. Ohio has a list of states that they will accept credentials, and they have a credentialing process to make sure that any law enforcement officers from outside are meeting the Ohio standards. So I will make the broadest outreach effort. I think with outside candidates, we have out-of-state candidates, there's more to think about in terms of that credentialing process. Should we see, we're not going to close the door on anyone that's out of state. I think it's merits looking into how that credentialing process will work for them to be certified in the state of Ohio. From a distribution network, I've been in contact with the Ohio Associations of Police Chiefs, and we will use their distribution channels, as that is a best practice in the space. But we'll also do our own channels of distribution, which includes LinkedIn, Indeed, our own social media, website, and a few other venues, including the Yellow Springs News, although that may be a limited market space.
What about the Ohio Municipal League publications?
Yes, we do. We have a partnership with them as well, and we'll post there.
So back to the selection of this citizen committee, are you soliciting recommendations for names from council people, or exactly what's your process for that?
I've been in contact with community leaders, and I've received referrals. I had folks reach out to me directly and wanting to participate, and I've also done my own legwork to look at community leaders that represent the community and the community's interest that would to be part of the advisory committee. And is anyone from 365 going to be on it? I can't speak to that until I finalize the list, or close to finalizing the list.
Okay, so I guess I'm asking council people if you're okay with the village manager running this process and making these choices. And maybe I'm the only one raising it, but I've been through this. And I know this has happened. This is different than how it's happened in the past.
I trust the process as I understand it.
I guess I have two thoughts. One is, obviously we will work in all of council as part of the final interviewing process. So even though that wasn't delineated, I expect, Josue, you're already contemplating that. And that is something I think we've done in the past. Josue, who are you kind of collaborating with on sort of putting the final committee together?
I have community members, and I have team, and the team that works with me here, our HR team, our police chiefs. I've also take advice from other police officers, other members of the police team, and the management team. That includes Johnny, Denise, Judy, and others.
Okay. How about?
And you and I have spoken, Brian.
Sure. And I was thinking, it'd be good for a council member to kind of, be in on the process, and I guess the final, committee and that sort of thing. So I'm happy to play that role. Alternatively, if there's a council member that you want to grab to be in the mix.
Okay, I'll follow up with you offline.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, I would like to be involved, and I think I have a lot of experience to be a contributing member of that search committee. I'm probably the most trained in police procedures, having been a former prosecutor and a lawyer.
I'm sorry if I forgot to mention, but Brianne Parcels is also advising me on this, as she's part of the team on this too. And so, thank you for your offer, Laura.
So it sounds like it's very staff-driven rather than community-driven.
No, there's the folks that are going to be scoring and interviewing. It's that citizen review panel.
How many people do you anticipate having on it?
7.
Okay, why 7? It's
a good management number, and it offers a lot more than the 4 that you just suggested.
Oh, I would like to see 9 or 11. I think it needs to be a pretty big group. So maybe Mary Ann has some thoughts.
I think I'm very comfortable with Josue taking the lead. I don't have an opinion. It's when you start getting to 11 people, it makes it more difficult for people to talk together. but I'm fine.
And I agree hopefully with your comments and concerns about, you know, the manageability of a number like 7, which means complete. But I think to assuage some of the concerns, I would imagine that committee might want to do, and I don't know, I don't recall if this was in your process already, you know, but some, you know, community broad sort of public thing. So I would imagine that would address some of the concerns that folks have that feel like they maybe aren't involved with the process. But if we broaden it out to community in some sort of public forum, I would imagine that would happen at some of the perhaps later stages of the selection process.
Yeah, and that's on the outline. So
yes. Okay. And I think that you also touched base on something else, Kevin, the possibility of having a community-wide engagement with the committee group, as they're the ones who are going to lead a lot of who are going to consider the community values, interests, and inputs in their own process.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, good.
In the spirit of something that we just did with the Citizen Review Board, I have a strong preference for being allowed to be involved in sort of a ranking of, you know, the behind the scenes, the ranking of top CVs, so that the ranking that I put forward, as well as maybe other council members who are interested in doing that, is considered in the evaluation process, just behind the scenes, so that we can see the CVs and indicate to you and your team our preferences and why.
Lisa, I will caution you that when council does that, in terms of the hiring process, in some respects, it creates a public record.
Okay, well, we'll good feedback. We'll nail this down. Okay, Josue, anything else you want to highlight before we wrap it up?
I think that's it. I did have Johnny was ready to talk about banner posts per request of Lisa Krieger. Johnny, I don't know if you want to weigh in or if council, we have time for that.
Sure, I guess if it sounds like it's quick, if Johnny wants to.
Sorry, Josue, I stepped around. Is this about the banner post?
Yes, and the location for a potential third.
Yeah.
We had talked about a couple of options internally, Lisa, in terms of where we have current space and where we would need to put a new post. And with a road infrastructure is an element. And so Johnny has been looking at locations along Dayton Street that are wide enough to accommodate posting. Johnny?
Well, yeah.
You know, guys, I hate to interrupt, but it is late, and I understand that I asked for this for Art and Culture Commission, but it can be tabled, and maybe even just email me, and we'll run it through ACC, and I'll bring it back. I don't want to keep people on this.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Future agenda items.
I would like for us to schedule a work session to do our goals. I don't think it works to have put our goal work at the end of a meeting and then, well, in this case, we had to drop it. And I think that if all the council members and staff, if we all submit things that we're thinking about, and then Brian, I guess you can sort of organize it and have a special work session in order to really drill down into.
Yep. We'll have Judy work on that via email. Okay.
I will just caution you that you might have a new council, so.
Yeah, I mean, why are we doing this now? We did it in January last year.
We're doing it so that our goals match with the budget rather than figure out a budget and then do our goals.
Okay, anything else? All right. If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Wait, one just really quick thing. I had it on. Just if you can, is it okay if I poll you folks regarding a September 21st special meeting of council with the outside council? I have it tentatively on the agenda. If you in fact wanted that as a meeting of the whole with your special counsel, I'll poll people and try to get that nailed down.
Or we could do it before the regular meeting on September 20th.
I don't want it at all that week because I am going to be out of state and I will be Zooming in from a different time zone, but I'd prefer to avoid that week altogether.
Okay, so can we do this by email, Judy?
Yeah.
Okay.
John has his hand up.
Yeah, I see. Johnny?
Hey, one thing that I brought to my attention today when I drove through town, and I'm going to tell all you guys that are running for election, please keep your signs off the public right of way and the public property. We pulled 8 signs today. We did not throw them away. They're in the back of the entrance of the Bryan Center. So we cannot allow that. So just so you know.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. I heard a second in there too. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Bye.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.